let's talk about something we've all wondered when you pull back and go silent. Does that avoidant person in your life actually miss you? You know who I'm talking about. The one who suddenly gets distant when things feel close, who seems to retreat just when you want connection. It's frustrating, confusing, and sometimes heartbreaking. But here's the truth. Yes, they do miss you. Just not in the way you expect. Avoidants often need space because intimacy feels overwhelming to them. Silence is not rejection, it's survival. When you step back, they notice. Your absence registers. They may not rush to text you or pour their heart out, but internally there is a recognition of your value. They miss the energy you bring. They miss the calm, the laughter, the consistency. But because their coping mechanism is to retreat, they might not show it in obvious ways. And here's the part we often get wrong. Their silence doesn't mean you should chase. In fact, chasing is the very thing that makes them run further. When you stay quiet, when you hold your ground, when you let them feel the gap you leave behind, that is when the missing actually grows. Because now they are faced with the reality of what life feels like without you constantly filling the space. But let's get real. The bigger question isn't do they miss you? It's what do you do in the silence? Do you sit there obsessing, waiting for them to come back? Or do you use that time to refocus on yourself, your growth, your peace, your joy? Because here's the most powerful shift. When you stop making it about whether they miss you and start making it about how you show up for yourself, the game changes. Avoidants miss you when you're silent. But the silence is also your gift. It's the moment you learn that your worth isn't proven by someone else's reaction. It's proven by how you hold your own ground. If they return, good. If they don't, even better, because you've built strength in the meantime. Either way, the silence serves you. So the next time you're tempted to break that silence just to get reassurance, pause, breathe, trust that your value is already felt, and then turn that focus inward. Because the truth is, the most important person who should miss you when you're silent is you. When people wonder if avoidants miss them when they go silent, the answer is yes, but not in the way you might imagine. Avoidant individuals are not typically expressive about their emotions. They have often learned to associate closeness with discomfort or even danger, so their instinctive response is to withdraw when things feel too intense. Because of this, they don't always show longing in the ways you may expect. They won't necessarily reach out with affectionate texts, calls, or reassurances. They may even look as if they don't care at all. But beneath that surface, your absence registers in their world. When you step back and fall silent, they feel the shift. The rhythm of their daily life changes without your energy, your voice or your presence filling the space. It's important to remember that missing someone doesn't always look like chasing them down. For avoidants, missing you can be quiet, internal, and difficult for them to put into words. They might notice little things like the absence of your laughter in their memories or the lack of your calming influence when they're stressed. They might even find themselves thinking of you more than they'd like to admit. But because vulnerability feels threatening to them, they often keep these feelings locked away, hidden even from themselves. Their coping mechanism is to suppress those emotions so they can stay in control. That doesn't mean the feelings aren't there. It just means they don't handle them the same way more openly expressive people do. Silence, ironically, can be the very thing that brings those emotions closer to the surface for them. When you were present, perhaps they took you for granted. When you were consistently initiating, reassuring, or filling in the gaps, they didn't have to face the reality of what life might look like without you. But when you step back, you create a space where your absence becomes undeniable. It isn't about punishing them, it's about allowing reality to settle in. That's when an avoidant starts to notice the value you brought, the stability, the connection, the sense of being understood. They may not articulate it, but internally they are aware of what they're missing. This kind of missing is subtle, and it doesn't always lead to action right away. Avoidants tend to wrestle with their emotions privately. They'll push back against the discomfort of longing because it makes them feel vulnerable. But the awareness is there. Your silence becomes a mirror, showing them what it's like to no longer have you available on demand. That's not a small thing. Even if they stay quiet on the outside, the absence you leave behind echoes inside them. What makes this dynamic so challenging is that many people expect missing to be demonstrated in obvious, romantic ways. They want proof through words or actions. With avoidance, the evidence is much quieter. It's in the way they hold back from moving on, in the way they glance at old conversations, or in the way their thoughts keep drifting back to you despite their efforts to stay detached. Missing you doesn't look like pursuit. It looks like silent recognition, internal acknowledgement, and subtle shifts that you may never fully see. Silence plays a powerful role in relationships with avoidant individuals because it creates the space they need to process their feelings. Avoidants often struggle when someone comes too close emotionally. Intimacy can feel suffocating, overwhelming, or even unsafe to them. Their instinctive reaction is to step back, withdraw, and regain a sense of control. When they feel pressured or chased during this retreat, it only amplifies their discomfort, pushing them further away. That is why silence, instead of constant pursuit, is often the most effective way to allow them to recognize your importance. It doesn't mean you're ignoring them or playing games. It means you're respecting the space they need to sort through their emotions. When you remain silent, you are essentially stepping out of the cycle of chase and retreat. For many avoidants, this pattern is familiar. One person seeks closeness while they instinctively back away. The more they are pursued, the faster and further they run. But when you stop chasing, you disrupt that cycle. Suddenly, they are left without the usual dynamic to lean on. Your silence gives them the time and distance to notice what is missing. It allows them to sit with the reality that you're not always going to bridge the gap for them, and that awareness can awaken feelings they typically suppress. Processing emotions for avoidance isn't quick or easy. They are not wired to lean into vulnerability the way others might. But silence creates an environment where they can start to examine those feelings without the added pressure of your presence or your demands. It's during this quiet space that they may start to realize how much comfort your presence brought, how your voice grounded them, or how your support filled a void they didn't want to acknowledge. In some cases, silence forces them to recognize that the connection mattered more than they admitted. Without the noise of constant contact, their inner awareness grows sharper. It's also important to note that silence doesn't just serve them, it serves you too. When you resist the urge to chase, you reclaim your own power and energy. You're no longer caught up in proving your worth or trying to earn their affection. Instead, you're standing still, holding space for yourself, and letting them come to their own conclusions. This shift not only gives them room to process, but also reinforces the message that your value is not dependent on their immediate recognition. The absence of chasing creates contrast. Think about it. When you're always the one reaching out, initiating, and filling the silence, they never have to face what life feels like without you. But when you withdraw and hold your ground, that emptiness becomes undeniable. They notice the gap, they feel the distance, and in that awareness, the seeds of missing begin to grow. It may not lead to instant action or dramatic confessions, but it plants something within them that can't be ignored. Silence rather than pursuit is what ultimately gives them the space to feel the loss, process it in their own way, and decide whether they're ready to step forward again. What truly matters in the silence is not only whether the avoidant misses you, but how you choose to respond to that silence. This is where the dynamic shifts from being about them to being about you. When someone pulls away, the natural instinct for many is to panic, overthink, and start reaching out more. You replay conversations, dissect their behavior, and wait by the phone for some sign of reassurance. But that response doesn't help. It only traps you in a cycle of anxiety and self-doubt. The real power lies in what you do during the silence. Do you let it consume you, or do you turn it into an opportunity for your own growth and stability? Silence is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront your own fears. Fear of being abandoned, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being enough. Many people react to that discomfort by trying to break it, sending one more text or making one more call. But every time you do that, you hand over your sense of worth to someone else's response. You start to believe that their reply, or lack of one, defines your value. That's why shifting your focus during silence is essential. Instead of chasing, use that time to reconnect with yourself. Fill the space with activities that make you feel alive, grounded, and confident. It might be spending more time with friends, diving into a passion project, or even just learning how to sit with your emotions without running from them. When you use silence to your advantage, you begin to notice something important. Your peace doesn't depend on anyone else's presence. You start to realize that you can create joy, stability, and fulfillment on your own. This isn't about pretending you don't care or shutting your feelings down. It's about refusing to let someone else's withdrawal dictate your emotional state. By focusing inward, you change the energy of the situation. You stop radiating neediness and instead embody calm and confidence. Ironically, that's often when avoidants feel the difference most. They sense that you're not waiting by the door, and that shift draws their attention in a way constant pursuit never could. What you do in the silence also sets the tone for the future of the relationship. If you crumble under the weight of it, the cycle of chasing and withdrawing will continue. But if you use it as a chance to grow, you're showing both yourself and the avoidant that your value doesn't diminish just because they step back. You're communicating without words that you are whole and capable, with or without their immediate involvement. That message is powerful. It not only protects your self-esteem, but also shifts the dynamic in a healthier direction. Ultimately, the silence is less about them and more about you. It's a mirror reflecting how much control you have over your own energy and choices. By choosing growth, self-care, and presence over obsession, you reclaim your power. You learn that your reaction to silence is what defines the experience, not their behavior. And that realization changes everything. Your worth is never defined by how someone else responds to you. And silence is one of the most powerful reminders of this truth. When an avoidant pulls away, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that their distance somehow means you're not good enough, not lovable enough, or not worth staying close to. That's the lie silence whispers when you let fear and insecurity take over. But the reality is that their behavior reflects their own patterns, not your value. Their retreat is about how they manage closeness, not about how much you deserve connection. The real test is how you hold your ground in those moments. Do you let their withdrawal diminish your sense of self, Or do you stand firm in knowing your worth regardless of their response? It's so common to equate another person's attention with validation. When they're calling, texting, showing up, it feels reassuring, like proof that you matter. But when they step back, it can feel like proof of the opposite. That's where the danger lies. If your sense of worth rises and falls with someone else's behavior, you've handed over control of your self-esteem. Silence then becomes unbearable because it feels like rejection. The shift comes when you start to separate your value from their actions. Their silence does not erase your importance. Their distance does not define your beauty, intelligence, or kindness. Your worth exists independently of anyone's acknowledgement of it. Holding your ground during silence means anchoring yourself in that truth. Instead of scrambling for reassurance, you remind yourself that you are already enough. You take a step back and recognize that their patterns of withdrawal are about their comfort zone, not your inadequacy. By standing firm, you stop letting external responses dictate your internal state. That's when the silence transforms from a threat into an opportunity. It gives you a chance to prove to yourself that you can stand steady, even when someone else is inconsistent. This isn't easy. There will be moments where the urge to break the silence feels overwhelming. You'll want to reach out just to hear something back, to get proof that you still matter. But every time you resist that urge, you strengthen the muscle of self-trust. You teach yourself that you don't need constant reassurance to validate your worth. You remind yourself that being valuable isn't about being chosen every second of every day. It's about knowing who you are no matter what. The irony is that when you stop chasing validation, people often begin to notice your strength. Your calm presence, your ability to hold your ground, creates a sense of stability that others are drawn to. But even more important than how it affects them is how it affects you. You start living from a place of confidence rather than fear. You stop giving power away to silence and reclaim it as your own. Their response or lack of it no longer defines you. You define you. Silence is not just an empty space, it's a powerful teacher. When you stop chasing, when you stop filling every gap with words, messages, or reassurances, something shifts. You finally create room for discovery about them, yes, but more importantly, about yourself. Many people think silence is about getting the avoidant to miss you, to notice you, or to realize your value. And while that can happen, the deeper purpose of silence is that it forces you to confront what's inside you. It asks, how comfortable are you with your own company? How much do you trust yourself when someone else isn't affirming you? How deeply do you believe in your own worth when it's not being mirrored back? Those answers reveal more about your strength and self-connection than any reaction from someone else ever could. Silence strips away the distractions. When you're not preoccupied with constant communication or busy analyzing every reply, you have to face yourself. Maybe you notice the places where you've been overgiving, pouring into someone else just to avoid sitting with your own emptiness. Maybe you realize how much of your self-esteem has been tied to whether someone reaches back out. Or maybe you uncover that you've been afraid of slowing down because then you'd have to hear your own thoughts. It's not always comfortable. But this is where the growth happens. By leaning into silence instead of running from it, you begin to see where you need to heal, where you need to let go, and where you need to strengthen your sense of self. The beauty of this process is that silence becomes less about waiting and more about building. It's no longer about whether they miss you. It's about how you're using the space to reconnect with your own identity. You might find joy in things you'd neglected, hobbies, friendships, passions that light you up. You might realize that your energy is better invested in yourself than in trying to control someone else's response. Over time, you stop craving constant validation because you've built a deeper connection with yourself. You start to feel whole not because anyone else is proving your worth, but because you finally recognize it on your own. And here's the irony: the moment you stop worrying about whether they miss you is often the moment they start to feel your absence most strongly. Not because you're playing a game, but because you've shifted your focus inward. You're no longer feeding the cycle of pursuit and withdrawal. You're no longer broadcasting neediness or fear. Instead, you're grounded, centered, and self-assured, and that energy is magnetic. Silence then isn't just an external pause, it's an internal transformation. In the end, the question isn't just if avoidants miss you when you're silent. The bigger question is, do you reconnect with yourself when everything else goes quiet? Because if you can sit in that space and still feel whole, then silence has given you the greatest gift. It has shown you that your value doesn't depend on anyone else noticing you. It depends on you noticing yourself. In the end, the question of whether avoidants miss you when you're silent matters far less than what you discover about yourself in that quiet space. Yes, they feel your absence, even if they don't always show it, but the real power of silence lies in how it teaches you to stand firm in your worth, grow through self-reflection, and reconnect with your own strength. Whether they return or not, you win, because you've learned that your value is never dependent on someone else's response. Thank you for listening, for showing up with open hearts, and for allowing this message to remind you of your power, your resilience, and the importance of holding your own ground.